Hi everyone, Mike Stuchiner, Master Herbalist here. And as always, I am with my two great co-hosts. There is B-O-N-E-S Bones, and then my new man, my homeboy, Bernie on a bench. So everybody, give my co-hosts a salute. So, I have a question for all my viewers. And I want to see a show of hands on this, please. How many of you have walked into a store, a vitamin store, a supplement store, an herb shop, a health food store, or online, whether you shop on Amazon, iHerb, VitaCost, Swanson, or any of the independently owned companies' websites, and you're looking to buy an herb product, okay? And you type in the herb you're looking for, and there are 30 selections, 30 choices of that one herb. And it comes in so many different varieties, and it comes in so many different versions and forms. And you start reading labels, and it's like, I don't know what any of this crap means. That's what today's video is about. Today's video is to bring a little bit of clarity about what all this fancy terminology means on a label of an herbal product, okay? So I've made a small list here of what I consider to be probably the most typical things that people are either confused about or that they should be taking a look for on a label to make sure it's there, and if it's not there, how to get that information. Now, did I see a show of hands? All right, you in the back. You, yay you. All right, thank you. So, let's start with the first thing. Sometimes you might see on a label where it says the term proprietary blend. Okay? Now, proprietary blends, I don't have a particular problem when people have or make proprietary blends, okay? It's not a great big secret, but as I've spoken about before, if they don't want to tell you how much of each herb is in there on the label, what I always suggest people do is call the company directly. As I've spoken about in previous videos, if a company is really transparent and honest, they're going to have no problem telling you what amount in either milligrams, or if, let's say, it's a tincture, how many parts of that formula is each specific herb. And there should be no question that people really should be able to answer those types of questions. If they don't, I would probably say I wouldn't want to give them my business, because you really should be fully informed before you purchase a product, before you make a purchase, okay? So that was a real simple one. A lot of people get very confused about that. You know, there's a lot of rumors that go around when you're looking at a proprietary blend. People say, well, the herb on top of the list, that's usually what is the most in that product. And that really is not necessarily the case at all. I'm not going to say that it isn't sometimes the case, but more often than not, it really is truthfully not the case. Okay? So check proprietary blend, call the company, ask them questions. Never be afraid. It is 100% your right. And it is their right to say they don't want to tell you, but it's then again your right not to give them your business. That's as simple as that as far as I'm concerned. Number two is when we look at different forms of extracts. Now, you might see, for example, the word that says standardized extract on a label, or you might see the word that says full spectrum extract on a label, okay? And, you know, there are some very subtle and easy hints if it doesn't specifically say it on the front of the label, okay? So, here's how this will work. I'm gonna go grab a couple of bottles. I'll be right back. I'm back. So here's a great example of what you will often find on a full spectrum extract. Okay, this is Gaia Herbs Kava Root. So this is their liquid cap version. Okay, and what it will often say is per one capsule. I don't know how clear this is going to come out, but we're going to hope. One capsule is giving you 442 milligrams of kava root extract, okay? Underneath it, it says that it is giving you a grand total of 75 milligrams of the concentrated kava lactones, okay? This is more often than not how it's going to show up on a label if something is full spectrum. Now, if something on the label, let's say the label were to say per one capsule, 442 milligrams of kava root extract. For a standardized version, underneath it, it will say standardized, and then it will give a percentage of that active ingredient, okay? And that is often how you're going to tell. So don't always rely on the front of the label. Always make sure you look at the side label and make sure that you understand what you're purchasing. Full spectrum extracts will often show the concentration levels in terms of milligrams. Okay, where most standardized versions, it will more often than not, it will say standardized to a certain percentage, and it may also give the milligrams as well, but it will always say standardized to a specific percentage of that same active constituent or family of constituents, okay? That's a real simple and easy one, all right? The next is when we talk about concentration ratios, all right? So, if you buy we'll start with if you're buying a capsule that has a powder inside, and it's known as an extract powder. What you always want to look for on the label, you might see, for example, you might see where it says 4*1 or 100*1 or 1*1 or 1*4, 1*10. So what are all these numbers? What do they mean? Well, this is simple. If the number on the left side is higher than the number on the right side, for example, 4:1, 100:1, 200:1, it means you have a very, very highly concentrated herb. If the number on the right is larger than the number on the left, like a 1:4, 1:10, you often have a less concentrated herb, and in most cases, what I would consider to be a much weaker herb. Now, I want to be clear, weaker does not necessarily mean it's bad. Some herbs you just don't need a super highly concentrated herb for, and some companies purposely make herbs in a slightly weaker concentration so they can be used by both a child and an adult versus making just a children's version and then making an adult version. And then the adults will take just more of it versus a kid, okay? So, sometimes what you will also see, and this is another example, this product is from a company called Jing Herbs. It's an Astragalus root extract powdered capsule. This is my personal favorite Astragalus product as a capsule. Now, to understand what it means when we talk about these 4:1, 5:1, or 1:1 extract scenarios, here's one of the things you have to learn. So first off, this product says 3 capsules give you 1,350 milligrams of Astragalus root extract. But it doesn't tell you what the concentration of the extract capsule is, okay? So, What I often recommend is always start by going on the website. In this case, Jing Herbs, when you go on the website and you look the product up, it says right on the product that it is a 10-to-1 extract. Now, each one of these, because it's $13.50 per 3 capsules, that's about 450 milligrams per capsule. But what you have to understand is it's not 450 milligrams as if you're taking just the whole root that's been dried and ground up. Each 450 milligrams is at 10 times concentration. So 450 milligrams is actually 4,500 milligrams concentrated of the root. So these are things that you should keep in mind when you're looking to figure out a dosage that might be most appropriate for you, because that's a pretty highly concentrated product. Now, this product suggests that you take 3 capsules twice a day. I personally, because I take a plethora of other herbs, I don't need to take that much of it. So I actually only take 1 capsule twice a day. But if this were just a regular Astragalus root capsule, I might take 3 capsules 3 or 4 times a day, because you're not getting the strength and the concentration from just that dried, ground up root. Okay, and the other thing is that when you're talking about a dried and ground up root, you do have to keep in mind that you may not necessarily absorb as much of it. So you need to take more to make sure that you're getting a good amount for uptake into your system, okay? Now, with that said, sometimes what you might see is a capsule will say Astragalus root extract 100-to-1 at 30 milligrams per capsule. And you might sit there and think to yourself, well, 30 milligrams is not very much, right? Well, 30 milligrams at 100-to-1 is the equivalency of taking 3,000 milligrams of the herb, okay? So that's pretty strong of a concentrated herb. So the point I'm making is you must, when you look at the amount that they're saying is on the label, if it's 30 milligrams, always look to see what the concentration level of the herb is. If it's 100-to-1 or 200-to-1, you're really getting a great product. But if it's a 1-to-1, for example, then you're really only getting 30 milligrams of an extract, and that's not very strong for an extract, okay? So that's why it's really important to take a look at what the label says in the milligrams that you're getting per cap or per 3 capsules or whatever their standard dosage is. And you also want to make sure you understand the concentration levels. If the concentration level is not on the label, call the company or look it up on their website. I mean, we all have cell phones and we all have internet access, so you can do it right when you're looking at the product if you're in a store. It's not that big of a deal, okay? I also want to mention something else since we were talking about extracts that I think is really important. Anytime you use a root version of the herb, you always want it to be in an extract form, whether it's tincture, whether it's an extract powder, whether it's a liquid cap, which is basically an extract inside of a capsule, or whether it is made into a broth, okay, or a soup version of the herb. And the reason is because roots tend to be very fibrous and tough, and just to dry and grind up a powder, you're going to have to take a very substantially large amount of it in order to be able to really utilize it by the body and get the most bang for your buck. So I'm going to give you an example. Last year, during the winter time, I always like to add Astragalus into my program. And one of the things I found was that I was having some trouble finding the Astragalus that I like. So what I did was I found a great source of Astragalus root that was the whole root dried and then it was cut into slivers, okay? And what I did was that I actually made a soup out of it, Or one of the other things I also did was I actually made a bone broth that winter that I would constantly make, and then I would add that into the bone broth mixture. So again, if you can't find what you need in capsule or tincture for whatever reason, don't sweat it. You can always get the whole herb and make your own extracts from it. All right? Next is you want to look if it is a tincture, okay? You want to look and see what percentage of alcohol versus water is in there. If you're looking at a single herb, let's say rhodiola or ashwagandha, or pick any herb you want, okay? All herbs have a certain amount of water-soluble compounds in them and alcohol-soluble compounds. And if the herb company is doing it correctly, which real good herb companies do, they always look at what the ratios are, and then when they make their extracts, they will use those ratios for water versus alcohol, okay? So most of that doesn't mean a lot to the average customer, but if you're interested in educating yourself on it, it's always a good idea just to see what the percentage and ratio is, because you can always look up online in almost any materia medica what the alcohol percentage of the compounds are and what the water-soluble percentage of the compounds found in an herb are. And then that will give you a general idea of whether or not that company is actually doing it correctly, okay? And then the final thing, or the final aspect of what you would want to look at and be concerned about when you're reading a label is you always want to make sure you understand what parts are being used in the product you're making. Is it the root portion or the aerial, or otherwise known as above ground portion? The stem, the leaf, the flower, whatever that herb is, or a berry, we'll say, okay? And you also want to look for, if it says it and if it's relevant, the species of the herb. So for example, I did my video last week, I believe it was, on echinacea. And it's important to understand what parts of the plant they're using in, like I spoke about, let's say, for example, Quick Defense uses a specific part of the echinacea plant. Okay, and it's also important to understand what species in certain instances, for example, like echinacea, because if it says Augustifolia is the only one that's being used in the echinacea product, it's going to be a slightly weaker version of echinacea, or a slightly weaker species, versus if it's the purpuree version, or species I should say, then you're going to get a stronger echinacea product on the whole. Okay, so again, this may not necessarily always apply to every herb, but for example, rhodiola is another good one. When you're looking at rhodiola, you want to make sure it's the Siberian species of rhodiola, because that is going to be the best version of it. Okay, again, it does not apply to every single herb all the time, but these are things that before you go shopping for your herb product, you should do a little research and find out what the best species you should look for is. Now, the reality is this. If you're using one of my top 4 companies, Gaia Herbs, Herbalist and Alchemist, Herb Farm, and Dr. Christopher's products, you generally don't have to worry about those things, because these companies use the most predominant and the best species possible and the correct parts of the herb in the formula. Here's another example of that, okay? There's a couple of trademark raw materials for the herb ashwagandha, okay? Now, you might have heard of a product called KSM 66. This is ashwagandha root, and I believe it's a 10-to-1 concentrate, but don't mark my words on that, all right? This specific version is only the root, and that is the only way ashwagandha should be taken is as a root extract. There are some companies out there that go against the tradition of how ashwagandha is taken, and they use the root and the leaf. Okay, so you want to make sure you look for those types of things. Is the company using the correct part of the herb? And if not, why not? Okay, so I hope today was educational for you guys, and if you have any questions, please put them below. I'm happy to answer your questions. And that's it for today, guys. So, Mike Stuchiner, Master Herbalist, B-O-N-E-S Bones, and don't forget, Bernie on a bench. Till next time, I'm out of here.